Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in the year 2021. We are on the second day with Esther. So this is day 267, second half of Esther, Esther chapters 6 through 10. So as we get into this, in chapter 6, we see everything shift. So the first 5 chapters really shows that the Jews were in a lot of trouble. But in chapter 6, we see how things turn around for them. In verse 1, that same night, the king simply couldn't sleep. He had the official royal records brought in, and his young male servants began reading them to the king. He must have thought they would be boring enough to put him to sleep. But in a way, his restlessness, the fact that he couldn't sleep, I chalked that up to Yahweh, because he just sets everything into motion with this. Because this happens, this right here, the king is reminded about Mordecai. He's reminded of what Mordecai had done for him, that they had not rewarded Mordecai. Remember back to that seemingly insignificant thing to this whole story where Mordecai saves the king's life by revealing a plot? Well, that's what we go back to. This whole thing hinges on that moment. The king is reminded of that at this key moment. And as he's reminded, he knows that he's indebted to Mordecai, and he wants to figure out a way to pay him back. And just at that moment, it just happens, right? That at that moment, Haman is coming in to seek permission to execute Mordecai. So at the moment that Haman, Mordecai's enemy, who has already put the death sentence on all the Jews, the moment he's coming in to ask for Mordecai's death, the king is being reminded that Mordecai had saved his life and he hadn't rewarded him yet. Just amazing, isn't it? Verse 6, when Haman entered, the king asked him, what should be done for the man whom the king really wants to honor? Of course, Haman figures it's him that the king wants to honor, and so he really lays it on thick. So everything now that Haman wanted for himself is going to be handed over to Mordecai. Everything. That's what happens in this split moment right here. Everything gets reversed. In verse 10, then the king said to Haman, hurry, take the robe and the horse, just as you've said, and do exactly for Mordecai the Jew, who works at the king's gate. Don't leave out a single thing you've said. Wow. So like his end actually comes by his own words, he's done this himself. In verse 13, his family see the writing on the wall. There's a reputation that the Jews have, that they're blessed and you better not do anything against the Jews. So Haman told his wife, Zeresh, and all his friends, everything that had happened to him. Both his friends and his wife said to him, you've already begun to lose out to Mordecai. If he is of Jewish birth, you'll not be able to win against him. Just look at that statement. If he is of Jewish birth, you'll not be able to win against him. This is the fear that the Lord constantly puts on people's hearts about concerning his people. You are surely going to lose out to him. Wow, you are, the family is no longer in his corner. You are surely going to lose out to him. So then he's off to the second dinner with the queen and the king, and we have the big reveal happen here in chapter 7, verse 6. We have been sold, I and my people, to be wiped out, killed and destroyed. And there's revelation for Haman. He had no idea that the queen was a Jew. If we simply had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have said nothing. But no enemy can compensate the king for this kind of damage. Wow. Yeah, Haman knows he's in trouble. Yeah, and so here's the death punch in verse 6. Esther replied, a man, because the king asks, who's done this? Esther replied, a man who hates an enemy, this wicked Haman. Haman was overcome with terror in the presence of the king and queen. What can he do to undo this in front of the king? There's nothing. There's nothing, because the law cannot be reversed. And here, what he has told the king to do is actually a sentence on this most beloved queen that the king is very much in love with. So now we find it completely reversed. The Haman tries to save himself, gets himself in more trouble. And then one of the servants speaks up as well. And here in verse 9, Harbona, one of the eunuchs serving the king, said, "Sir, look, there's the stake that Haman made for Mordecai, the man who spoke up and did something good for the king. It's standing at Haman's house, 55 feet high, or sorry, 75 feet high. Impale him on it," the king ordered. And that's the end of Haman right there. And everything that he owned is now going to be given over to Esther, and Esther's going to give it to Mordecai. So in chapter 8, verses 1 to 2, we see what the story is really all about. It's getting Mordecai moved into position, into the place where the Lord wanted him. That same day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther what Haman, the enemy of the Jews, owned. Mordecai himself came before the king because Esther had told the king that he was family to her. The king took off his royal ring, the one he had removed from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Esther put Mordecai in charge of what Haman had owned. So here's what the Lord does. Haman wanted to curse the Jews, and the Lord turns around and makes it a blessing. So Mordecai was given everything that Haman ever had. But we're not done yet. There is a reversal, a turning of the table against their enemy. Verse 7 to 8, King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Look, I've given Esther everything Haman owned, and Haman himself, my servants have impaled on the pole because he planned to attack the Jews. So you yourselves write to the Jews whatever you like in the name of the king, and seal the letters with the king's royal ring. Anything written on the name of the king and sealed with the king's royal ring can't be called back." And so here the Jews were given permission to defend themselves. And a real fear came upon all the people. It's a good day to be a Jew in this point right now. So in verse 17, in every province and in every town, wherever the king's order and his law arrived, for the Jews it was a day of happiness and joy. For them it meant feasts and a holiday. Many people in the land became Jews themselves out of fear of the Jews. Yeah, if you can't beat them, join them. I wonder, though, as Mordecai comes into this place of importance, is he replacing Daniel? Daniel was in that place for a long time advising the king. But Daniel, again, was more of a spiritual counselor, and Mordecai is now a political counselor. So does that mean that there's two counselors now to the king? You have the well-respected he's greatly revered Daniel as a spiritual advisor to the king. And then we have Mordecai, who's now come in as this right arm political person for the king. So verses 3 to 4, all the leaders of the provinces, rulers, governors, and those in charge of the king's business helped the Jews because they were afraid of Mordecai, because Mordecai was very important in the palace. News about him was sweeping through the provinces. Indeed, Mordecai was becoming more and more important every day. And just to understand that the whole thing, the Jews being able to defend themselves, they were actually given, they were given rights as if they were full citizens of Babylon, the right to take up arms to defend themselves. The motivation was not wealth. Here in verse 10, these were the 10 sons of Haman, Hammedatha's son, the enemy of the Jews, but the Jews didn't lay a hand on anything their enemies owned. And that gets repeated in a few verses after that as well. So in everything in your life, even in those moments that seem like disastrous and you don't know what's going on, understand that Yahweh has a reason for everything. Certainly, in chapter 10, verse 3, certainly Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus in importance. The Jews also admired him greatly, and his many brothers and sisters were proud of him. He always wanted to do good things for his Jewish people and to speak up for all his family whenever they needed help. Yeah, so everything that Esther had to go through was for the Lord to move his agenda forward to get Mordecai in a position that his people were protected as he was bringing them back to the promised land. So amazing stuff, isn't it? And when you stop and you really think of the ramifications, I know we often limit it. We just limit it to the actions of Esther, but when you think of the overall plan, you see the Father's love for his people. You see the protection that he moves into place. And yes, he does call upon individuals to pay a higher price for the protection of the whole. And that's what we have to keep in mind, because we think that the Lord never call upon us to enter into bad situations, but we're told that he would strengthen us in those situations. He would be there in those situations for us, but we may be called upon to pay a higher price than our brothers and sisters, for the sake of our brothers and sisters, to move this agenda forward. Yeah, that's important to understand about this relationship. It's not all butterflies and daffodils, I'll tell you that. There are moments when we have to walk through those dark valleys, but the rod and the staff of the shepherd comfort us. He's always with us. Never let go of that fact. You guys be blessed today. Be much encouraged. We have very little left in the Old Testament here, and then we will be changing formats for the New Testament. But you guys be blessed, and we will catch up with each other tomorrow.